A bus with bars on the windows slowly pulled up to the gates of the Sunshine Correctional Facility. At 7:30 a.m. on a hot August day, Samantha Mitchell sat in the back seat, clutching the only bag of personal belongings she had been allowed to bring. Through the dirty glass, she could see gray concrete walls topped with barbed wire and tall guard towers. Florida did not greet her with palm trees and the ocean, but with steel bars and armed guards. "Welcome to your new home, ladies," said the guard as he opened the bus door. His voice was indifferent, mechanical, like someone who had said those words hundreds of times before. Samantha was the only new prisoner that day, which made the moment even more humiliating and lonely. The intake procedure took 4 hours. Fingerprinting, photographing, medical examination, issuance of khaki uniforms, and the number 47291. Samantha Mitchell ceased to exist as a person and became part of the system. Each stage of the procedure was carried out with cold efficiency, reminding her that she no longer had control over her life. "Mitchell, 47291, the clerk read aloud, her eyes never leaving the papers. "Credit card fraud, 3 years, eligible for early release in 18 months with good behavior. Block C, cell 247. Dr. Elizabeth Chen, a prison doctor of Korean descent with kind eyes behind steel-rimmed glasses, was the first person to address Samantha by her name instead of her number. During the medical examination, she asked quietly, "How are you feeling, Samantha?" "The first day is always tough. I thought I was ready for this," Samantha replied honestly, pulling on her prison uniform. "But now I realize that no one can be ready for this." Dr. Chen nodded understandingly. "It's important to find your rhythm here. Don't try to prove anything in the first few days. Just observe and learn." On the way to Block C, Samantha saw the inside of the prison for the first time. Long corridors with fluorescent lighting, metal cell doors, the smell of disinfectant mixed with sweat and fear. The sounds were particularly oppressive. The clanking of locks, the echo of footsteps on the concrete floor, muffled voices behind the walls. "Newbie," whispered one of the inmates as Samantha walked by. Others looked at her appraisingly, trying to determine what threat or opportunity she represented. Philip Harris was among the guards who accompanied her to her cell. He was a 35-year-old man of average height with tired eyes and barely noticeable wrinkles around them. His uniform was ironed, his shoes polished, but there was a tension in his movements, as if he were constantly thinking about something else. "The rules are simple," he explained, opening the door to cell 247. "You get up at 6 in the morning and go to bed at 10 at night. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner are served at set times. Any disciplinary violations are recorded in your personal file and may affect your eligibility for early release." The cell was small, 3 by 4 meters, with a bunk bed, a metal toilet, and a tiny sink. Samantha's cellmate was Rosa Morales, a 40-year-old woman serving time for drug trafficking. Rosa was lying on the bottom bunk, reading a well-worn novel. "I'm Samantha," she introduced herself. Rosa looked up from her book. "Rosa, what brought you here?" "Credit cards. And you?" "I tried to make a living the only way I knew how." Rosa shrugged. "I have 3 children at home. I did what I had to do." Samantha's first dinner in prison was a real ordeal. The dining hall was huge, filled with stainless steel tables where women of all ages sat. The unwritten rules of the prison hierarchy were evident in who sat where, who talked to whom, and who looked at whom. "Don't stand where everyone can see you," Rosa advised quietly. "Stay close to me for the first few weeks." The food was tasteless. Mashed potatoes, a cutlet of unknown origin, canned vegetables. But Samantha forced herself to eat, knowing she needed strength to survive in this place. Prison warden Robert King appeared in the dining hall during dinner. The 55-year-old man with gray hair and a stern face walked around the tables, watching the prisoners. His presence instantly changed the atmosphere. Conversations became quieter, movements more cautious. "King runs this place with an iron fist," whispered Rosa. "But they say that things happen here that he prefers not to know about." After dinner, Samantha learned about the daily routine. Work shifts began at 8 in the morning. Some prisoners worked in the laundry, others in the kitchen, and still others cleaned the grounds. Rest time was limited, 1 hour after lunch and 2 hours in the evening before lights out. Work here isn't just a duty, it's a way to survive, Rosa explained when they returned to their cell. Idleness in prison is a direct path to trouble. Keeping your hands and mind busy is the best defense against depression and conflict. The first night was the hardest. The sounds of the prison did not stop even after lights out. A woman was crying somewhere. Someone was talking in their sleep. Metal doors creaked on their hinges. Samantha lay on the top bunk, staring at the ceiling and thinking about how she had gotten to this point. 3 years ago, she worked as an administrator at a small accounting firm in Orlando, rented a one-room apartment, and dreamed of saving up for her own house. Then, her mother fell ill with cancer, and her health insurance only covered part of the treatment costs. Samantha started small, a few purchases on other people's credit cards she found on the internet. Then, the scheme became more complicated, and the amounts grew. When she was caught, the total damage amounted to $78,000. "I don't condone what I did," she said in court, "but I didn't do it out of greed. I was trying to save my mother's life." The judge was unmoved. "Your motives are understandable, but the law is the law. There are legal ways to get help in a difficult situation." Her mother died 2 weeks before the sentencing. Samantha buried her using her last savings, then boarded a bus that took her to Sunshine Correctional. The next morning, Philip Harris was conducting his morning check in Block C. He went into each cell, checking that the inmates were up and ready for the day. When he reached cell 247, his gaze lingered on Samantha. "How was your first night?" he asked, in an unexpectedly gentle tone. "I survived," she replied curtly. Something in his eyes told her that he understood what it meant to survive in difficult circumstances. Later, Samantha learns that Philip has been working at the prison for 8 years, that he has a wife, Jennifer, and 2 children, 10-year-old Ethan and 7-year-old Emily. She learns that he is behind on his mortgage payments every month and that his car needs expensive repairs that he cannot afford. But for now, Samantha sees him as just another guard, part of the system that took away her freedom. She could not have imagined that this tired man in uniform would become a central figure in a story that would end in tragedy. 3 weeks had passed since Samantha's arrival at Sunshine Correctional, and she began to notice the subtleties of prison life that had not been apparent in the early days. The inmates formed informal groups based on nationality, type of crime, or simply liking each other. The guards were also different. Some strictly followed the rules, others turned a blind eye to minor infractions, and still others openly abused their position. Philip Harris belonged to a special category. He was neither overly strict nor lenient. Samantha noticed that he often looked pensive, as if he were dealing with some internal issues. Sometimes she caught him looking at her, not in a judgmental or threatening way, like the other guards, but more like he was studying her, almost sympathetically. "Harris is different from the others," Rosa remarked one evening as they were getting ready for bed. "He's not the type who enjoys having power over people. I hear he has problems at home." Samantha got a job in the prison library, a small room with a few hundred worn books and 2 computers for educational programs. The librarian was Mrs. Patricia Lee, a woman in her 60s who had been working at the prison for 20 years. She treated the inmates with rare respect and understanding. "Education is the only way to stay out of here," she told Samantha. "Statistics show that inmates who receive an education or job training are 3 times less likely to reoffend." In the library, Samantha met Philip for the second time outside of the usual procedures. He brought books that had been confiscated from inmates during a cell search. Most of them were romance novels or detective stories, but among them was an accounting textbook. "Is this yours?" he asked, holding out the textbook. "I studied accounting in college," Samantha replied. "I worked in that field until I ended up here." Philip nodded. "It's a good profession, stable." "It was stable," she said bitterly. Something in her tone made him pause. "What led you to do what you did, if you don't want to tell me?" Samantha looked at him in surprise. Guards didn't usually ask about inmates' personal histories. "My mother had cancer. The treatment cost more than I could earn, honestly." Philip was silent for a few seconds, then said quietly, "I understand." After that, their brief conversations became more frequent. Philip would come into the library under various pretexts. to check the computers, bring or pick up books, make sure everything was okay. Samantha began to look forward to these visits, though she didn't admit it to herself. From their conversations, she learned that Philip had grown up in a small town in Georgia, served in the army, and then moved to Florida in search of a better life. Working in a prison wasn't his dream job, but it provided a steady income and health insurance for his family. "I have 2 children," he told her once, "Ethan and Emily. Ethan wants to be a doctor, and Emily dreams of ballet. Children's dreams are expensive." Samantha heard the tension in his voice that she knew so well. It was the tension of a man who counted every penny every month, who put off buying new clothes to pay for his children's lessons. "How much do they pay you here?" she asked cautiously. $38,000 a year, he replied. "That's not much for a family of 4 in Florida." Gradually, Samantha began to notice signs of corruption in the prison. Some inmates received extra privileges, better food, extra time for phone calls, access to prohibited items. In exchange, they either paid money or provided sexual services to the guards. Dr. Chen was one of the few staff members who actively opposed this system. During a routine medical examination, she quietly asked Samantha, "Are you okay? Is anyone forcing you to do anything against your will?" "Not yet," Samantha replied honestly. "If anything happens, come see me," the doctor said. "I can't change the whole system, but I can help individuals." Chief King held weekly staff meetings to discuss security and discipline issues. Samantha heard from other inmates that he knew about the abuse but preferred not to intervene unless it caused serious problems. "King only cares about statistics," Rosa explained. "Low violence, few complaints, no escapes, that's all he cares about. If the guards take bribes or force inmates to have sex, but it doesn't show up in the reports, he turns a blind eye." The 4th week brought the first serious conflict in Samantha's life. An inmate named Teresa Johnson, serving time for aggravated assault, decided that the new girl was spending too much time in the library and getting special attention from the guards. "You think you're better than us?" she asked Samantha during dinner, approaching her table accompanied by 2 allies. "I'm not bothering anyone," Samantha replied calmly, continuing to eat. "I don't like the way you look at Guard Harris," Teresa continued, "as if you have special plans." The tension in the dining hall became palpable. The other inmates stopped talking, waiting to see how things would unfold. Rose put her hand on Samantha's shoulder, signaling her not to react aggressively. "I don't have any plans," Samantha said. "I'm just serving my time." Teresa leaned closer. "Make sure you do, because girls who think they're special usually get a reality check." The incident was noticed by Guard Davis, one of the most unpleasant employees at the prison. Instead of diffusing the situation, he simply watched with a smirk, clearly hoping for a fight. The next day, Philip asked Samantha about the incident. "I heard you had some trouble with Johnson." "Nothing serious," she replied, but he noticed the tension in her voice. "Johnson can be dangerous," he warned. "If she starts causing trouble, let me or another guard know." "Why are you concerned about me?" Samantha asked bluntly. Philip hesitated. "I worry about all the inmates. It's my job." But Samantha could see that wasn't the whole truth. There was something personal in his eyes, something that went beyond professional duty. A few days after the incident with Teresa, Samantha was working late in the library, sorting through new book arrivals. Most of the inmates had already returned to their cells, and the hallways were empty. Philip entered the library around 9 o'clock in the evening. "The workday is over," he said. "It's time to go back to your cell." "I need to finish cataloging," Samantha replied. "Mrs. Lee asked me to finish by tomorrow." "She can wait," Philip said, approaching her desk. "Rules are rules." Samantha looked up and suddenly felt that something had changed. Philip was standing closer than usual, and there was an expression in his eyes she had never seen before. "Samantha," he said quietly, using her first name instead of her last name or number. "You're not like the other inmates here." "We're all here for different reasons," she replied cautiously. "Some deserve a second chance more than others," he continued, taking another step closer. Samantha felt her heartbeat quicken. She knew she was in dangerous territory, but she couldn't deny that she liked the attention. After months of humiliation and dehumanization at the hands of the prison system, someone's personal attention seemed priceless. "I have to go," she said, getting up from her chair. Philip didn't move, and when she tried to walk past him, their bodies almost touched. "Samantha, wait." She stopped, looking into his eyes. The hallway was quiet, only the hum of the fluorescent lights breaking the silence. "What?" she whispered. Instead of answering, he reached out and gently touched her cheek. The touch was tender, completely different from the rough treatment she was used to in prison. "You're a beautiful woman," he said, "and smart. You shouldn't be here." Samantha knew she should pull away, report the guard's inappropriate behavior, protect herself. But instead, she froze, enjoying the first display of tenderness she had felt in months. "Philip, this is wrong," she finally said. "I know," he replied, but he didn't move his hand. But sometimes right and wrong aren't so clear-cut. The moment lasted only a few seconds, but it changed everything. When Philip finally pulled away and escorted her to her cell, they both knew they had crossed an invisible line. That night, Samantha couldn't sleep. She kept thinking back to that moment in the library, analyzing her feelings. The physical attraction was obvious. Philip was an attractive man, and she was a lonely woman deprived of human warmth. But there was something more. In his eyes, she saw understanding, sympathy for her situation. The next day, their interaction became more reserved, but the tension remained. Philip avoided long conversations with her in public, but sometimes she caught his gaze across the hallway or the dining room. Rose noticed the change in her neighbor's behavior. "You're playing with fire," she warned one evening. "What are you talking about?" Samantha tried to deny. "The way you look at security guard Harris, and the way he looks at you." Rosa sat down on the edge of the bed. "Listen, I understand. We're all human, we have needs. But getting involved with a guard is a one-way ticket to big trouble." "Nothing's happening," Samantha insisted. "Not yet," Rose agreed. "But I can see where this is going. Be careful." October brought the first signs of cooler weather to Sunshine Correctional, but the atmosphere inside the prison was becoming increasingly heated. Samantha had been there for 2.5 months, and what had started as innocent conversations with Philip Harris had grown into something much more complicated and dangerous. Their meetings in the library became regular. Philip found reasons to go there every few days, usually at the end of the workday, when most of the inmates were already in their cells. Mrs. Lee, the elderly librarian, usually left early, leaving Samantha to tidy up alone. "I had a dream about a house," Samantha said during one of these meetings, sitting at a table with a pile of books to catalog. "A small house with a garden where I could grow tomatoes and roses." Philip sat on the edge of the table, breaking every rule of professional conduct. "What kind of house?" "Nothing special. 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, a porch, a place where you could start over." She looked up at him. "Do you have a house?" "Yes," he sighed. "A 3-bedroom house with a mortgage we can barely afford. Jennifer is always worried about money. Ethan needs braces. Emily wants to take dance lessons. And I work here for peanuts." Samantha saw the fatigue in his eyes, the familiar expression of someone who carries the weight of responsibility for others. "How old were you when you got married?" 22. "Jennifer was pregnant with Ethan," he said, looking out the window at the gray prison walls. "I thought it would be easier, that I could provide for my family, that we would be happy. And now? Now I realize that life rarely goes according to plan." A silence filled the air between them, filled with unspoken words. Samantha reached out and touched his hand. It was a simple gesture, but in the context of prison, it meant crossing a dangerous line. "Philip, we can't," she whispered, but she didn't pull her hand away. "I know," he replied, intertwining their fingers, "but I can't stop thinking about you." Their first kiss happened a week later. Philip stayed in the library longer than usual, helping her rearrange the shelves. When she reached for a book on a high shelf, he stood behind her, their bodies touching. Samantha turned around, and the distance between their faces was minimal. "We're going crazy," she whispered. "Maybe," he leaned closer. "But I feel alive for the first time in years." The kiss was tender, desperate, full of pent-up passion and the knowledge that it was wrong. When they broke apart, they were both trembling. "No one can find out," Philip said. "I understand," Samantha nodded. "But secrets are hard to keep in prison." Teresa Johnson was the first to notice the change in Samantha's behavior. During dinner, she sat down at the table where Samantha and Rosa were sitting. "It's interesting to watch people," Teresa said, staring intently at Samantha, "how they think their secrets remain secrets." "What are you talking about?" asked Rosa, immediately sensing a threat. "About how our princess here thinks she's so special." Teresa leaned closer to Samantha. "Staying late in the library, getting special attention from a certain security guard." Samantha felt the blood drain from her face. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know more than you think," Teresa smiled. "And I know that information can be very valuable." After dinner, Rosa took Samantha aside. "She knows," she said bluntly, "and she's going to use it against you." "What should I do?" "Stop immediately," Rosa was categorical, "or find a way to keep her quiet." But it was already impossible to stop. The relationship between Samantha and Philip had gone too far. They didn't just meet in the library. He found ways to be alone with her during his shifts, in empty corridors, even in storage rooms. "I'm thinking about quitting my job," he told her during one of their meetings in late October. "Finding something else." "Because of me?" "Because of us," he hugged her. "Because I'm willing to risk everything for a few stolen moments with you." Samantha understood the seriousness of the situation. If they were caught, she would face additional charges and a longer sentence. He would lose his job, face criminal prosecution, and see his family destroyed. "Maybe we should wait," she suggested. "I have 18 months left before I'm eligible for parole." 18 months is forever, he pulled her closer. "I don't know if I can last that long." In November, Samantha began experiencing nausea and dizziness. At first, she blamed it on stress and prison food, but when the symptoms worsened, she was forced to see Dr. Chen. "When was your last period?" the doctor asked during the examination. Samantha tried to remember. In prison, the days blurred together, and she didn't keep track of her cycle as carefully as she used to. "I'm not sure. A month ago? Maybe longer." Dr. Chen examined her more closely and then took a blood sample. "The results will be ready tomorrow," she said. "In the meantime, get some rest and drink plenty of water." That night, Samantha couldn't sleep. The thought she was trying to push away kept coming back. Her relationship with Philip had been irregular and always rushed, but they hadn't always been careful. The next day, Dr. Chen asked her to stay after her routine checkup. Her face was serious. "Samantha, you're pregnant," she said bluntly. "About 6 weeks." The world spun around Samantha. She sank into a chair, unable to believe what she had heard. "That's impossible," she whispered. "The blood test doesn't lie." The doctor sat down across from her. "I need to know, did this happen before you were incarcerated or—" "No." Samantha covered her face with her hands. "It happened here." Dr. Chen was silent for a few minutes, thinking about the situation. "Samantha, this is very serious. If the father is a prison employee, it could have far-reaching consequences." "What should I do?" "First, you need to think about your health and the health of the baby," the doctor said cautiously. "You have options, but they are all complicated in a prison setting." "What if I give birth? Then child services will take the baby away immediately after birth. You will only be able to see him during short visits." Samantha felt tears welling up in her eyes. She had lost her mother, she had lost her freedom, and now she could lose her child. "No one should know about this yet," Dr. Chen said. "Give me a few days to think about what to do." Over the next few days, Samantha lived in a daze. She tried to act normal, but Rosa noticed the change. "What's wrong?" she asked. "You look sick." "Just tired," Samantha lied. When Philip came into the library again, she didn't know how to break the news to him. He noticed her depressed state immediately. "What's wrong?" he asked, looking at her with concern. "Philip, I have something to tell you." She took a deep breath. "I'm pregnant." He froze as if he didn't understand what she was saying. "What?" "I'm pregnant. With your child." Philip took a step back, turning pale. That's impossible. Dr. Chen confirmed it. 6 weeks. He sank into a chair, covering his face with his hands. My God, what have we done? Philip, listen to me. Samantha moved closer to him. We can handle this. No one needs to know. How can no one know? He raised his head. You can't hide a pregnancy forever. Dr. Chen won't tell anyone. We have time to think. Time? Philip stood up and began pacing the room. I have a wife and children. If this comes out, I'll lose everything. What about me? Samantha's voice sounded hurt. Do you think this is easy for me? He stopped and looked at her. In his eyes, she saw fear and panic, but not the love and support she had hoped for. I need time to think, he said, and hurried out of the library. Over the next few days, Philip avoided Samantha. He conducted his checks in her block quickly and formally, avoiding eye contact with her. Samantha felt betrayed and alone. Meanwhile, Chief King began to notice unusual behavior among some of his staff. During the weekly meeting, he raised the issue of discipline. I'm getting reports that some guards are getting too close to the inmates, he said, glancing around the room. I remind everyone that personal relationships with inmates are strictly prohibited. Philip sat in the back row, trying to look calm, but Samantha knew he was panicking. Teresa Johnson wasn't sleeping either. She began to openly hint to other inmates about Samantha's special relationship with the guard. I wonder what services our librarian provides to get such attention, she said loudly enough for others to hear. The tension was mounting. Samantha realized that the situation was spiraling out of control. She couldn't hide her pregnancy forever. Teresa was becoming increasingly aggressive, and Philip was distancing himself from her. Dr. Chen called her in for a follow-up examination a week after the diagnosis. How are you feeling? She asked. Physically or emotionally? Samantha smiled bitterly. Both. The nausea has gone, but I feel trapped. The baby's father is avoiding me, and the other inmates suspect something is wrong. Dr. Chen nodded understandingly. Samantha, I have to ask you directly. Do you want to keep the baby? Samantha was silent for a long time. I lost my mother. I lost my freedom. This baby is all I have. But think about the practical aspects. Giving birth in prison, being separated from your child immediately after birth. I know. Tears streamed down Samantha's cheeks. But I can't. I can't kill the only thing that connects me to hope for the future. Dr. Chen took her hand. Then we have to be very careful. I can only hide your pregnancy for a certain amount of time. How long? Until the 4th month at the latest. After that, it will be impossible to hide. So we have 2 months to come up with something. When Samantha left the infirmary, Teresa was waiting for her with 2 allies. Your meetings with the doctor have become interesting, Teresa said. Is it something serious? Just a routine checkup, Samantha said, trying to walk past her. Not so fast, Teresa blocked her way. I think it's time we had a frank talk. About what? About the fact that you need protection, and I need information, Teresa smiled. I think we can help each other. Samantha realized she was trapped. Teresa was offering her a deal, protection in exchange for information about her relationship with Philip. Refusal would mean open war with one of the most dangerous inmates. I need to think about it, Samantha said. Not too long, Teresa warned. My patience isn't endless. That night, Samantha lay in bed with her hand on her still flat stomach. A new life was growing inside her, but with each passing day, the danger to that life increased. Philip was avoiding her, Teresa was threatening her, and the authorities were becoming suspicious. What have we gotten ourselves into? She whispered into the darkness. She didn't know that at that very moment, Philip was sitting in his car in the prison parking lot, holding his phone with his lawyer's number. He realized that the situation was spiraling out of control and began to consider radical solutions to the problem. December brought an unusual cold spell to Sunshine Correctional. Samantha sat in her cell reading a letter from her former employer, informing her that her position at the accounting firm was no longer available. Another door to her past had slammed shut forever. Bad news? Rosa asked, noticing her neighbor's expression. I lost my job, Samantha said, folding the letter. When I get out of here, I'll have to start from scratch. You don't look upset, Rosa remarked. Samantha placed her hand on her stomach. The pregnancy was still invisible, but she felt changes in her body every day. Maybe starting from scratch is exactly what I need. It had been 2 weeks since she told Philip about the pregnancy, and he continued to avoid her. Their meetings in the library had stopped, and he carried out his checks in her block mechanically, never meeting her eyes. Samantha understood his fear, but his cowardice hurt her more than any of Teresa's threats. The pressure from the other inmates was mounting. Teresa became openly hostile, creating situations where Samantha was vulnerable. While working in the laundry room, someone accidentally pushed her, causing her to fall onto the concrete floor. In the dining hall, foreign objects were thrown into her food several times. "She's testing you," Rosa explained. "She wants to see if you'll break or find a way to fight back." "What if I fight back? Then she'll declare open war on you." Dr. Chen was the only person who knew the truth and tried to help. During her next examination, she quietly said, "Everything is fine with you, but the stress could harm the baby. We need to find a way to resolve the situation." "What way?" Samantha asked desperately. "The baby's father pretends I don't exist. The inmates sense that something is wrong, and the authorities are becoming suspicious." "Maybe you should tell the truth?" the doctor suggested cautiously. "To whom?" "To Warden King, if you present it correctly as a case of coercion." "But it wasn't coercion," Samantha interrupted. "We both wanted it. Officially, it doesn't matter. A prisoner cannot consent to a relationship with a prison officer." Samantha thought long and hard about this advice. Telling the truth would destroy Philip, but it might save her and her child. Keeping quiet meant living in constant fear and uncertainty. The decision came unexpectedly. On the morning of December 15th, Teresa approached Samantha during breakfast, accompanied by 3 allies. "Time's up, princess," she said loudly enough for the whole table to hear. "Either you start cooperating, or we'll tell everyone your little secrets." "What secrets?" Samantha tried to remain calm. "About how you're fucking the guard, Harris," Teresa smirked, enjoying the reaction of those around her. The dining room fell silent instantly. All eyes turned to Samantha. She felt the blood drain from her face. "You're lying," she whispered. "Lying?" Teresa leaned closer. "Then explain why you're in the library so often. Why he always finds reasons to go there. Why you look like you have morning sickness." The last words hit her like a blow. Teresa knew about the pregnancy. Somehow she had guessed or found out. Samantha got up from the table and hurried toward the door, but Teresa grabbed her by the arm. "Run, princess. But remember, the truth has a way of coming out." Samantha spent the rest of the day in turmoil. By evening, she had made up her mind. If Teresa was going to tell everyone her side of the story, Samantha would tell hers first. She asked Guard Davis for a meeting with the warden. "It's a personal matter," she added. "Personal matters are handled through lawyers," Davis replied indifferently. "This concerns the security of the prison," Samantha insisted. That caught his attention. An hour later, she was ushered into Warden King's office. Robert King sat at a massive wooden desk, studying documents. He looked up when Samantha entered. "Sit down, Mitchell. What did you want to talk about?" Samantha sat down on the edge of the chair, feeling her heart pound in her throat. "Sir, I need to report a breach of security protocol." King put down his documents and looked at her intently. "I'm listening." "One of your employees has engaged in an inappropriate relationship with an inmate." Samantha's voice trembled, but she continued. "With me." The silence in the office became oppressive. King slowly took off his glasses and wiped them, thinking about what he had heard. "This is a very serious accusation, Mitchell. Do you understand the consequences of such statements?" "I do, sir." "Name the employee." Samantha took a deep breath. "Guard Philip Harris." King wrote the name on a piece of paper. "Describe the nature of this relationship." We were close, physically close, and now I'm pregnant." If King was shocked, he didn't show it. His face remained impassive. "When did it start?" 2 months ago, in the library." "Are you claiming rape?" Samantha hesitated. One word could save her and destroy Philip completely. "No, sir, it was consensual." "Do you understand that you are admitting to a serious violation of prison rules?" "I do." King pressed the intercom button. "Send Guard Harris to my office, immediately." The next 10 minutes dragged on like hours. Samantha sat in silence while King took notes. When there was a knock at the door, she felt her stomach tighten with fear. Philip entered the office, and his face changed instantly when he saw Samantha. "Sit down, Harris," King ordered. "We need to have a serious talk." Philip sat down, his eyes fixed on Samantha. She could see the horror and betrayal in his gaze. "Inmate Mitchell has made a serious allegation regarding your relationship," King began. "She claims that you engaged in an inappropriate relationship with her and that she is pregnant with your child." Philip turned pale. That's not true." "Is she lying?" King asked. We never," Philip stammered, looking at Samantha. "Harris, I'll ask you again. Did you have a physical relationship with Inmate Mitchell?" A long pause. Philip closed his eyes. "Yes." "And she's pregnant?" "That's what she says." King made a few more notes. "Harris, you're suspended from duty pending the outcome of this investigation. Turn in your weapon and badge to Officer Davis." "Sir, please, I have a family." "You should have thought about your family earlier," King replied coldly. "Mitchell, you will be transferred to solitary confinement until your case is resolved." "Solitary confinement?" Samantha asked in surprise. "For your own safety. After making such a statement, you could become a target for other inmates." 2 guards led Philip and Samantha out of the office by different routes. They looked at each other one last time in the hallway, and Samantha saw something in his eyes that frightened her. It wasn't just fear or anger, but cold determination. The isolation cell was located in a separate wing of the prison. The cell was even smaller than usual, 2 by 3 meters with no windows, just a thick steel door with a small slot for passing food. Samantha spent 3 days there in almost complete silence, thinking about her decision. On the 4th day, December 19th, she had a visitor. The guard opened the door and let Philip in. "You have 10 minutes, said the guard and closed the door behind him. Philip looked terrible. His eyes were red from lack of sleep. His clothes were rumpled. He was no longer wearing his guard's uniform. "Why did you do it?" he asked quietly. "I had no choice," Samantha replied. "Teresa knew. She threatened to tell everyone." "You ruined my life." "What about my life? What about our child?" Philip sat down on the only chair in the cell. "Jennifer filed for divorce. She took the children to her mother's. I lost my job. I might be prosecuted." "Philip, I'm sorry, but..." "Sorry?" He raised his head sharply. "You're sorry?" Something in his tone made Samantha retreat to the wall. Philip stood up and approached her. "Do you know what I've been thinking about these past 3 days?" he continued. "I've been thinking about how to solve this problem." "What problem?" "You. The child. All of this." Samantha felt fear. "Philip, what do you mean?" Instead of answering, he took something out of his pocket that made her heart stop. It was a homemade knife, made from a sharpened piece of metal with a handle wrapped in electrical tape. "Where did you get that?" she whispered. "It's amazing what you can find in prison workshops, if you know where to look." His voice became frighteningly calm. "And it's amazing how easy it is to sneak it in here when you're a former guard." "Philip, please." "You see, Samantha, problems need to be dealt with at the root." He took a step closer. "If you're gone, the baby is gone. There will be no witnesses. There will be no scandal. They'll find your DNA, blood tests. That won't solve your problems." "Maybe," he shrugged. "But at least you won't be able to do any more harm." Samantha pressed her back against the wall. "Philip, think about what you're doing. You're not a murderer." "No?" He raised the knife. "I killed people in Afghanistan. Do you know what it's like to take a life? That was war. That's different." "It's the same war to me." His eyes glazed over. "A war for survival." Samantha tried to reach the door, but Philip blocked her way. There was nowhere to hide in the cramped cell. "Don't make this more painful than it has to be," he said, raising the knife. "Help!" Samantha screamed. "Help me!" But the isolation cell was built to muffle sounds. Her cries faded away in the thick walls. She tried to block the first blow with her arm. The blade cut through her forearm and blood spattered the gray walls of the cell. The pain was sharp and blinding. "Philip, stop. Think of our children." "We don't have children," he said, striking her again, aiming for her stomach. "We can't have children." Samantha fell to the floor, clutching her wound. Blood seeped through her fingers. She felt the life leaving her body. "Please," she whispered. "The baby isn't to blame." Philip stopped, looking down at her. For a moment, something human flashed in his eyes, regret or pain, but then it disappeared. "I'm sorry, Samantha," he said, and delivered the final blow. Samantha Mitchell died on the floor of a solitary confinement cell at 3:47 p.m. on December 19th. Her arms clutched to her stomach, trying to protect the child she would never see. Philip stood over her body for several minutes, then hid the knife and knocked on the door. "I'm done," he said to the guard through the crack. "How is she?" "Quiet." I think she finally understood the seriousness of the situation. The guard opened the door and Philip walked out without looking back. Samantha's body was not discovered until 3 hours later, when dinner was brought in. The screams of the guard who found the body echoed throughout the wing of the isolation ward. Dr. Chen was among the first to arrive and immediately realized that she had lost not only Samantha, but also the child she had been trying to protect. Chief King arrived 10 minutes later. He stared at the bloody body for a long time, then ordered the entire prison to be locked down. "No one comes in, no one goes out until we find out what happened here," he said. Detective Daisy Vasquez of the Marion County Sheriff's Department received the call at 7:23 p.m., a 42-year-old woman with 20 years of experience in law enforcement. She had seen a lot, but a murder in a prison was always a particularly difficult case. "What do we have?" she asked her boss, King, upon arriving at the scene. "An inmate named Samantha Mitchell, 28 years old, found dead in her cell around 6 p.m. "Cause of death?" "Multiple stab wounds. Dr. Chen says she was also pregnant." Daisy examined the crime scene. Blood on the walls, defensive wounds on the victim's hands, no murder weapon. Everything pointed to a struggle and a deliberate killing. Who had access to this cell? A limited number of people: guards, medical staff, administration. "I need a list of everyone who entered the isolation cell today." The investigation began immediately, and very soon Detective Vasquez would realize that this case would uncover not only a murder, but a whole system of corruption and abuse within the walls of Sunshine Correctional. The morning of December 20th greeted Sunshine Correctional with an unusual silence. Detective Daisy Vasquez arrived at the prison at 6:30 a.m. before sunrise. The crime scene was cordoned off, and no one had entered the isolation cell since the body was removed the night before. Daisy was an experienced investigator. 20 years on the force had taught her to read crime scenes like books. Of average height, with short dark hair and piercing brown eyes, she had earned a reputation as a detective who wouldn't stop until she found the truth. "Show me all the surveillance footage from yesterday," she said to Chief King. King looked exhausted. "Detective, I have to tell you that the camera in the isolation cell corridor has been out of order for the last 3 days. "How convenient," Daisy remarked dryly. "What about the other cameras?" "They're working fine." In the surveillance room, Daisy studied the footage from various cameras. At 3:15 p.m., Philip Harris could be seen walking down the hallway toward the isolation cell. At 4:02 p.m., he came out. 47 minutes had passed between those two moments. "That's a long time for a short conversation," she remarked. "Who authorized his meeting with the inmate?" "I did," King replied. Harris said he wanted to try to get more detailed testimony from her about their relationship. "And you allowed a potential defendant to meet with a witness alone?" King blushed. At the time, it seemed reasonable. Daisy made a note in her notebook. Every detail pointed to serious protocol violations. The next step was to talk to Dr. Chen. The doctor met the detective in the medical wing, and it was obvious she hadn't slept all night. "Doctor, I'm told you knew the victim was pregnant," Daisy began. "Yes. Samantha came to see me with symptoms about a month ago." "Did she name the father?" Dr. Chen hesitated. "That's covered by doctor-patient confidentiality." "Doctor, the woman is dead. Doctor-patient confidentiality no longer applies." She said the father was Philip Harris. "How did she feel about the pregnancy?" "Scared, but determined to keep the baby. She lost her mother and saw this child as her hope for the future." Daisy wrote down the answer. "And how did Harris react to the news?" Samantha said he started avoiding her after he found out. He was scared of the possible consequences. Scared enough to kill? Dr. Chen sighed. Detective, things happen in this prison that I've been trying to change for years. Abuse of power, corruption, coercion of inmates. Samantha wasn't the first, but I hoped she would be the last. Explain. Some guards use their position to get sexual favors from inmates. Some take bribes, some deal drugs. The higher-ups know, but they turn a blind eye until there's a serious problem. And murder is a serious problem. Very serious. Daisy found Philip Harris in a small motel 20 miles from the prison. He wasn't trying to hide, which the detective found strange. Usually, murderers either run far away or act as if nothing has happened. Mr. Harris, I'm Detective Vasquez from the Sheriff's Department. Can I talk to you? Philip sat on the edge of the bed in the cheap room, staring at the wall. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. I know why you're here, he said without looking up. Then you know I have some questions to ask you about the death of Samantha Mitchell. She's dead? The question sounded strange. Either Philip was a very good actor, or he really didn't know the outcome of his actions. Yes, Mr. Harris. She was found dead in her cell last night. Philip covered his face with his hands. My God. You were the last person to see her alive. We talked. I tried to find a way to resolve the situation. What situation? The pregnancy, the scandal, the destruction of my family. Daisy sat down across from him. Tell me about your conversation. Philip was silent for a long time, then began to speak slowly, as if in a trance. I went to her to discuss what to do next, but when I saw her, when I realized she was really pregnant, that it was real, something inside me broke. What exactly happened in that cell? We argued. She wanted me to take responsibility for the child, leave my wife, and start a new life with her. I said it was impossible. And then? Philip looked up at the detective. In his eyes, she saw an emptiness that spoke louder than any words. Then I realized there was only one way to solve the problem. You killed her. Yes, I killed her. Daisy felt relief and disgust at the same time. The confession simplified the case, but it didn't make it any less tragic. How did you kill her? With a knife, a homemade one. I got it from the prison workshop a few days ago. Where's the knife now? I threw it into the lake on my way here. Daisy called for backup and formally arrested Philip Harris on charges of first-degree murder. When the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, he didn't resist. Detective, he said as she led him to the car, I want you to know, I didn't want this to happen. I loved her. A strange way to show your love, Daisy replied. The investigation continued for another week. Divers found the knife in the lake exactly where Philip had indicated. Samantha's blood was on the blade, and Philip's fingerprints were on the handle. DNA analysis confirmed that he was the father of the child Samantha was carrying. But Daisy knew that this murder was just the tip of the iceberg. Her investigation uncovered systemic problems at Sunshine Correctional that had allowed the tragedy to happen. Interviews with other inmates revealed a picture of widespread corruption. Guard Davis took bribes for smuggling contraband. Guard Thompson coerced inmates into sexual favors. Deputy Warden Miller sold drugs inside the prison. It's been going on for years, Rosa Morales said during an interview. Everyone knew, but no one said anything. Samantha was the first to dare to tell the truth. Why didn't anyone complain before? Who could they complain to? The bosses knew about it. And if you complain, they transfer you to worse conditions or extend your sentence for minor violations. Teresa Johnson testified about how she used information about Samantha's relationship with Philip. I knew there was something going on between them, she admitted, and I planned to use it to get privileges, but I didn't think it would lead to murder. Chief King tried to portray himself as a victim of circumstances. I run a large facility with limited resources, he defended himself. It's impossible to monitor every action of every employee. But you knew about the problems, Daisy insisted. I suspected, but suspicion is not proof. What about complaints from inmates? Inmates often lie to try to cause problems for staff. The investigation attracted the attention of the media and human rights organizations. The story of a pregnant inmate killed by a guard became national news. The New York Times published an expose on conditions in Florida's private prisons. Samantha's family, including her cousin Lisa, her only remaining relative, filed a civil lawsuit against the prison and the county. Samantha made a mistake, but she didn't deserve to die, Lisa said at a press conference. The system that was supposed to protect her allowed a predator to prey on vulnerable women. Philip's lawyer tried to negotiate a deal with the prosecution, arguing that his client was acting in the heat of the moment. My client was under tremendous stress, the lawyer argued. He lost his job, his family, and was facing criminal prosecution. This led to a mental breakdown. The prosecutor rejected the offer. This was premeditated murder. The defendant planned the crime, made the weapon, gained access to the victim, and cold-bloodedly killed her and her unborn child. The trial began in March of the following year. Daisy testified about the investigation and presented evidence, including Philip's confession. Dr. Chen spoke about Samantha's pregnancy and her desire to keep the baby. She saw hope in that child, the doctor said with tears in her eyes. A chance to start a new life after he got out of prison. Philip's wife, Jennifer, testified about her husband's condition in recent months. He changed, she said. He became nervous, aggressive, but I never thought he was capable of murder. Philip's children were not present in court, but their photos, 10-year-old Ethan and 7-year-old Emily, stood on the defense table as a reminder that there are innocent victims of crime. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. The verdict was unanimous, guilty of first-degree murder and the murder of an unborn child. The judge sentenced Philip Harris to life in prison without the possibility of parole. You abused your position of trust, the judge said during sentencing. You betrayed your oath to protect those in your care. Instead, you became a predator, and when your actions threatened to be exposed, you committed a horrific crime. Philip listened to the sentence without emotion. In his final statement, he said, I am sorry for what happened. I am sorry for Samantha and her child, but nothing I say will bring them back. The fallout from the case spread far beyond the courtroom. Warden King was fired, and several guards were arrested on various charges. Sunshine Correctional was closed for renovations and to implement new security protocols. The Florida Department of Corrections implemented new rules to prevent abuse, including mandatory surveillance cameras in all areas, regular staff checks, and a hotline for anonymous complaints. Dr. Chen was appointed chief medical examiner for the county prison system, using her experience to protect inmates from abuse. Samantha's death must not be in vain, she said in an interview with a local newspaper. We must ensure that such a tragedy never happens again. Detective Daisy Vasquez was praised for her thorough investigation, but she did not feel satisfied with the outcome of the case. Justice prevailed in the courtroom, she told reporters after the verdict. But 2 lives are still lost. Samantha Mitchell and her unborn child are dead because of a system that failed them. Rosa Morales was released early for cooperating with the investigation. Before her release, she visited Samantha's grave in a small cemetery near the prison. You were brave, she said, placing flowers on the fresh earth. You told the truth even though you knew it was dangerous. Your death changed everything. Teresa Johnson was serving the remainder of her sentence in another prison. In a letter to a local newspaper, she wrote, I regret my role in what happened. If I hadn't pressured Samantha, maybe she wouldn't have felt the need to speak out. Maybe she would still be alive. Samantha Mitchell's story became a symbol of the need for prison reform. Her name was engraved on a memorial plaque at the Florida Department of Corrections building with the inscription, In memory of Samantha Mitchell and her unborn child. Their deaths remind us of our duty to protect those in our care. But perhaps Samantha's most important legacy is the change she brought about in the lives of those who knew her. Dr. Chen continued to fight for prisoners' rights. Daisy Vasquez specialized in cases of institutional abuse. Rosa Morales became an activist for prison reform. The truth about what happened at Sunshine Correctional was painful but necessary. It showed that even in the darkest places, there must be a light of justice, and that silence in the face of evil makes everyone complicit in the tragedy. Samantha Mitchell was looking for a second chance. Instead, she found death. But her death gave the system that killed her a second chance, a chance to become better, fairer, more humane.